Thank you for that. Good morning.
Good morning, lovely. Let me raise my glass to you, Jen. A little hot coffee is a good thing. It goes a long way.
Yes.
So it is Monday morning, unique Monday morning. For us, for all of you who are watching us having our silly conversation, which it's bound to be because that's kind of how we engage with each other 84% of the time.
Easily. Yeah.
And maybe, by the way, we'll talk about that, the value of humor in leadership,
Oh,
and certainly in our relationship in leadership. But you heard my conversation with Rick Hirschhout, the head of AJC in Los Angeles, which I found very interesting. There are some amazing conversations over the course of this week, and I hope you're tuning in for all of them. But this one is different in that the other people, other than Rabbi Jack Bemperad, whom I'll interview in a couple of days, I haven't known the others, Natan Sachs and Rick Hirschhout. I met them briefly online beforehand to prep the conversations, which is a nice thing to do. Get a sense of the person, get a rapport, and then frame the conversation and then hang up essentially and meet. But Jen, I feel like I know you somehow.
You're recognizable.
Yeah, you're recognizable, but to flatter you sincerely, you're not the same Jen that I met with a hat on in whatever Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf in the Hillel building on, what street is that, Hillgard?
Yes, on Hillgard, exactly, in Westwood. Yeah.
Yeah, you really aren't, because I remember when we were in classes together, and then we had a conversation over tea or coffee. And I'd kind of been watching you in the best possible way and thinking, there's something really impressive about this person and her persona, your personality, your warmth, and your humor, which obviously really appeals to me, and your intellect, and more. But those were, highlights of what I saw in our classes. And then we had the conversation, which was, I said to you, and I'm saying this because I like looking back on it. I think you do. And I know some of our people watching weren't around then. They don't know how this started. I didn't know your family, clearly. You didn't know mine. We were just fellow students at a seminary. And I remember saying to you at the time, I have this congregation, this number of people, Calabasas, the warmth, the sweetness, the music, all this kind of stuff, what we're about. And I said, I wonder if you as a chaplain, and at the time you were becoming a chaplain? Yes, still in the process.
No, at that point, because we graduated together. I had entered the rabbinic program.
Oh, at that point. Okay.
Yes, that was part of your, you have to do as part of your requirements an internship.
Yeah.
With the congregation.
That's very true. And at the time, my thought was, maybe would you consider congregational work? Does this even interest you? And you were, I'm going to misquote you, but paraphrase what I remember, which is the best version of history anyway, which is you said, not for me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Love the coffee, but not for me. And it was very clear from you that you said to me, I'm really a one-on-one person. That's where I'm in my groove. This is what I know I do well and I'm content doing. And I wasn't going to let go. So I said, well, just give it a thought. And maybe it's worth at least trying it and seeing what it looks like. And you can always shake it off and tell me, thank you very much. Had that experience, got my internship requirement covered, and I'm done. But it didn't work out that way. And I am the voice of many, 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 many people who say, thank God it didn't work out that way, that you didn't turn away from VOS, you turned inward and leaned in more and more. And then you and Adam and Asher and Lucy moved to this area and really, drew your life to ours, which has been incredible.
Yes.
And one of the things that even though you and I see each other and text and talk all the time, when I get to see you, and the strange thing now, for anybody who doesn't realize, this isn't a virtual background and nor is Jen's, we're in our offices in the synagogue 2 doors away on Zoom. But to see you in person is such a rare and beautiful thing right now. That's something I've certainly missed in our relationship.
Yeah, just the daily, because I think about, when we were having that conversation in Tea Leaf and Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf, is I'd done at that point 4 years of work in a hospital. And so I knew, like you say, one-on-one and in group settings, but I wasn't comfortable doing invocations for the hospital, right? It's just like, there's a lot of people and I don't know these people. And I can't be in relation to them in the same way that I felt very comfortable in. And I was also doing hospice work. At that point, it was, I guess a year and a half into doing hospice work. So all of that was just, that easy groove, and I already had known that it was important to me as a leader not to be a lone gun. That being the one person, because people at other hospitals, made offers, things like that, but it would be the one chaplain in the entire hospital. And I knew that's not healthy, that does not work. And so, and I, starting in just the kind of collegial relationship of exactly being able to have humor and play and being able to just even share a glance that says, oh, I know where you are in this. Especially given the kinds of things that we walk into, not only the beauty and the, oh my God, we're like on the High Holy Day bema together going, we're so lucky we get to do this. I remember, just having that realization with Jack at that first, him reminding me and helping ground me that first High Holy Day, like, oh, what have I walked into here? That kind of just the presence, right, which I think we all are yearning for, but the presence and the relation, just being together in it and in so much is so, it's just critical for good health and well-being, and it's also just fun.
Yeah. One of the things that you did that we should probably, in the interest of Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, days of awe, honesty, you punched me in the arm a lot in the early days.
That's one of and I have to say that spiritual intervention, because it absolutely is a spiritual intervention, I rarely use. So I just want to reassure everyone out there.
I'm feeling it now. So go ahead.
It's kind of, I think about, the Zen master, right, who would whack someone over the head sometimes or across the shoulders to wake up a person into body and so that's my rationalization about why it's okay spiritually for me to punch you.
My attorney disagreed. That's called personal injury. I said tattoo, it's not a bruise.
Oh, no. And Adam has always told me he will not bond me out for assault. That's one of the ways I restrain myself.
That's good. By the way, I think people who know you and know me know that we use humor in the best way possible, right? And I really live with a number of different guidelines for myself. And one of them that might sound trivial, but it isn't, is I've got to have fun. And that has to be fun, if not in every day, certainly in every few days. I can't go a week without fun. And fun might be, it's doing something sometimes that is just trivial and silly. And Braun and I will sometimes at the end of a challenging day, listen to stand-up comedy.
Yes.
Because we want we don't have a TV in our room for good reason. That's just something we won't do. And we barely watch TV, except in COVID. Now we started watching a few things we're enjoying. But I'll put on my phone somebody we really like, and we're just howling with laughter. And it's such a good way to just settle everything at the end of a day. And that's fun. And play. I mean, I think that's something that you and I have
yes,
always really valued. And I think that's part of what we have that maybe, I don't know if it rubs some people the wrong way when they see it. I hope not. Hopefully it's good modeling for people. Maybe some people are lacking that in their lives and relationships.
Well, it's, in the past, for instance, with some of the conversation groups, particularly if we're talking about like the month of Adar, where Purim is, and it's all about joy. And I'll talk and ask about moments of joy and delight, because it's so critical to just that surprise, and the laughter that comes up is so critical to our good health. But also, we like, I think about Donald Winnicott, who's a psychologist, just in the openness of play when and he was speaking particularly in terms of with children, which is not obviously far off from me or much what I've seen of you. So, but in that play where you kind of lose yourself, that sense of self, that's where there's discovery and growth, and being able to not only restore, I think, restore the soul, but also to discover and find new connections and new imaginings. So, both for restoration and for growth, I think it's so important to have play and joy, which is why I always recommend, giving you a good hit on the shoulder. At least that works for me.
It's like the jumper cables. It's definitely working. How does that fit into crisis? Because you and I live in relation to crisis, right? Usually, thank God, but as we know, not always. It's somebody else's crisis. And I know, raising my kids as a cantor and rabbi, they've always been one phone call away from somebody else's crisis. Like, I don't know who's calling. It's an 818 number. I don't necessarily know if it's somebody saying, how do I get on the website, or when is the Shabbat service, or in floods of tears because of a suicide in the family, or a diagnosis, and my kids, in the early days when my office was at home, we had the old-fashioned answering machine on the kitchen counter with a speaker. And I really shudder to think all the things that my kids heard, because people would call and leave messages, and my kids were eating dinner and they'd hear somebody in the other room sobbing, wailing, talking about things that, thank God I realized. Ron at one point said, wait a second, I don't think this is good for them. It's not good for us. We have to have a way to separate this. We have to have a way to shift from this to that to this. But they turned out okay, so it's okay. But we deal with crises. We are crisis managers in many ways. We're handling other people's stories and what we know is inevitable in human lives, which is challenge and crisis. But we're also then human beings. And sometimes when you deal with too many crises in a week or a day or a month, or particular ones, it's really hard to be that professional who says, only the professional part of me dealt with a crisis. Because I care about these people.
Right.
And I'm a person dealing with my own vulnerability. So how do you approach it? Yeah,
that was because I think, and of course, as you were interviewing and considering me and how I might fit, I was also watching you, and I was taking great care as far as, because for me, because of exactly what you just described, this is so much more than just clocking in and out. And so that I remember early on, it was actually Dick Cord's funeral. And I remember being alongside of you and seeing, and I knew how many years, decades, that you had been doing this work. And I saw that you interacted with each person as a person, that you weren't scripted and canned, as opposed to what I've seen at other, I'll say among other clergy at times. I think to protect themselves, they've professionalized the heart and the soul out of how they connect. And so being able to connect empathetically and in a real way, without zeroing oneself out, or without, this is why I think working in a hospital and with hospice was so helpful, because I learned how to, I think about, an old-fashioned camera, right? Because my iPhone doesn't have an aperture, I'm pretty sure. But walking in and not knowing what tragedy or what circumstances I'm coming into, but I need to be there in a real way for people. That's just for my integrity, that I have to function that way. So figuring out how to open an aperture wide enough for that real connection to happen, but that still allows me to remain calm, to not come into a room in the hospital where someone is coding and you have a crash cart and all of this chaos and energy and anxiety, for me not to add to it, especially when there's family in that, but rather to, and staff also, because they feel, but to be able to help settle and ground people like an electrical current. So I learned how to do that. People have asked so many times after visiting somebody who's dying, for instance, or with a funeral, how do you do this? And I always, it's like, I'm very aware, very conscious that leaders don't despair. Right? It's part of being a leader, is that one does not despair. But of course leaders cry, and so knowing that I will hold myself, and function in a way that keeps everyone, God willing, around me safe emotionally, and I'm there to serve them. But then, of course, I walk out of that room. I finish my day and I touch the mezuzah on my office door, and walk out. And then there's the different rituals that I have in place to, again, with that analogy to an electrical current, to discharge all that energy, and to be able to, also grieve and mourn, to cry, to have, to have space of quiet, so that things that may have come up for me in terms of, this person that I'm alongside, they're saying things that remind me of something that's very painful in my life.
Right.
And so being able to notice that and to give time to, not in the time with them. So I'm never working out anything with them. I'm always very careful about if what I'm about to disclose and describe about myself, is this actually going to serve them? Is this always about them? But to then make sure that there's space for me to work through those things. And thank God I have a fabulous, incredible therapist who I see every other week, and if need be, of course, I can call up at any point, but to continue that kind of work. What, besides delicious branzino and paired with a good wine, what do you do for yourself? How do you manage those?
It's a good question. I used to be consistently in therapy for this reason, and most of my therapy would be about processing, my life, which, as my kids and I talked about, it's not really a job; it's an identity. So it's not like I, at 6 o'clock, cease being a rabbi on a certain point. And I find that also if I'm out in the community, and my kids, my family certainly grew up with that, because they've been in this community as the Cantor rabbi son and daughter since birth, which means you're always on, which means you always have to have an awareness. And for kids, that doesn't mean you need to be guarded. We're not the royal family.
Well,
Maybe, sorry. Let's leave it alone. But I don't think it means that when my kid was screaming in a parking lot when he or she was 3, I couldn't be an exasperated parent. I'm a human being. And I am rooted in that. I am, you know that. I'm not at all intent on being something that I'm not. So I'm really okay with showing my human foibles to my community. I'm actually decidedly okay about that. And sometimes my kids have been the ones to say, Dad, I go, it's okay. It's all right. I don't want people to think I'm anything other than what I am. Do I swear in my private life? Yeah, I do. Sometimes it's really a great release. When I'll say something like that, my kid will go, one of my kids will go, Dad, they'll go, or they won't do that. Worse, they'll say, Rabbi.
This is what I do also at home. Chaplain.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a lot of that in my life.
Yes.
And I get it, and I appreciate that, by the way. Maybe not in the moment. I appreciate it. For me, yeah, it's cooking. I wish I could get back to another form of creativity, which is sculpting. You know, I love that. I just don't have the space, the time and the space to do that. But I need to. And it's writing, and it's singing, and it's gardening, and it's being out with the hens. And it's really being out with the hens, meaning out sitting on a tree stump in their coop, in their run at their level, having them hop on my lap, looking at their silly little faces. It's therapeutic.
Yes.
The best, without question, the best part of my life is my wife. No question. I'm not saying that because she might be watching. Let's assume she isn't. For sure, the best part of my life. So that comes back to play and fun and a sense of dovetailing and really, having a good connection. But that's not where I want to download what I dealt with at 4:00 that day. Right. And I did that for too many years. And it was a great burden on her, just as it was with the kids. And one of the things I learned from you was, and it was hard for me to learn this, which was healthy boundaries. And that am I their friend or am I their rabbi? That's a really tough one for me. It certainly was. Now I feel much clearer about a lot of these issues, thanks to you. Much clearer. So that was a great intervention on your part at a time when I'd been doing things habitually for so long. And you go, well, this is what I do, and this is clearly what I do well. Well, maybe not. And then I read a book when I hit a point of what is the closest I can come to burnout that I know. And I literally, Yom Kippur, I think it was a few years ago, drove up the coast, said to Braun, I'm useless. I'm useless to you. I'm useless to the kids. And she said, pack a bag and go somewhere and just take care of yourself. And don't come back until you're ready to. And I went up to a little place, Carpinteria area, and I just thought, what's going on? Why do I have tears in my eyes driving up the 101? And I'm not unhappy about anything. I'm really fulfilled in my work. Do I want to switch my job? No, I love this. Do I want to switch anything in my family life? No, I love this. As challenging as it is, raising kids, those ages, all that. So what's wrong? And I realized, I don't know. That's what I didn't know at the time till I started reading and recognizing, oh, there's a term for this. There's something in physiology. There's something in hormone levels. It's what happens when you, as one of the books described, keep using that emergency exit all the time. Yeah. It's only supposed to be used for emergencies. And yet in this life, we use it all the time. That's crisis, right? Yeah. And so how do you rebuild serotonin? How do you rebalance your life? And that's what I've tried to do. I do it through prayer. That helps me. I do it through certain friendships, yours included, that ground me, revitalize me. I think carefully about relationships that drain me and relationships that invigorate me. And it doesn't mean that I don't want those people in my life. I just know what I need and when, as much as I can manage that. I also, I have a little, I think, healthy fear of what can happen.
Yes. Yeah.
Truthfully.
Right. No, absolutely. I think about the times when you were away on sabbat. Not going to say the word.
Yeah.
When you
were away.
Yes.
Extended period of time, Jen.
When I was the sole spiritual leader, and I was so conscious, as far as it just really heightened for me that I have got to make sure I'm getting adequate sleep, that I am on time with my meals, that, all these different things, because of knowing how important it is that I'm present, that there isn't, it's just not the same sort of, like, oh, I'm going to take a few sick days. That's not really the same kind of luxury. So to be able to know that this is, it's such a long, I think about marathoning, and just knowing how to pace oneself and being able to do that for myself, so that I'm just able to keep trucking along without injury, and keep going safely, and get into that groove. And even when the hills get high, it's sort of like, okay, but I've done hills before, settle into that, knowing that even though it's really hard in the moment, that there is a point where this, I'll reach the top and things will even out. And I just have to be careful in the meantime.
Yeah. Yes. And yes. And yes. We talked about the fact that 14 years after cancer, which proved you to have trekked the hills. I love the hills behind you in this moment.
Yes, I know, they're there.
So you know what you can do. And you go, okay, I am a survivor. I'm in that category of human being.
Yeah.
And then I remember you told me that the doctor, when you got to the 5-year mark, and tell me if I'm wrong, you kind of said, hey, this is the 5-year mark. This is great, right? And the doctor basically said, yeah, but in your particular kind of case, it could happen in year 14.
Yes. Even that number.
I know.
That was the actual number she said. And I remember it when I came to because he was year 7. It was a different oncologist. Year 7 said to me, you were so aggressive in your treatment. You did so many things that were just right on. Just go live your life. You've had gold stars. Everything's been clear. Just go live your life. Check in every year if you want. Yeah. But, and then when I got to this, coming into year 14, I remember kind of being like, that would have been June 8th. Came to year 14, diagnosis anniversary, and thinking here's 14, and remembering that number, and just a little bit of like, whew. And then yes, so remarkable when I got out of this part. We thought, and you also suffering in the past from GERD, acid reflux, this is what it seemed was going on. And of course, during a time of coronavirus, it's really hard to get tests. Things are closed down. So, and given the kind of stress, that seemed to make sense. And my love of spicy foods and tasty things, all of that made sense. And my heart.
I'm a candidate for GERD, by the way.
I know. Well, this is why, and I'm always, one of the things ever since diagnosis has always been this, because of your history. So you
did a good voice there. Do it again.
Thank you. Because of your history, you got my quotations there, because always going to doctors and hearing, it could be, and having extra tests. And so I trained myself so that I didn't always live in a place of fear when there wasn't anything specific in that moment to be afraid of, to remember, and I trying to think, I believe it's this fabulous therapist of mine. She said, if you hear hoofbeats, right, the tendency is, don't look for zebras because those are pretty rare in Los Angeles. Right. So if you hear hoofbeats, just expect it's going to be a horse. So yes, it's going to be something usual, run of the mill. Don't go down the rabbit hole because of your history. And that served me.
By the way, you just did zebras, horses, and rabbits in one little. Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, well, I am a little hungry. No, just so yeah, when I got out of the hospital, because my heart had been having I'd been getting worse. This all started mid-March, and I had a very bad virus in March, and so I thought, between GERD and maybe this virus, just things were off. But the heart rate,
that was crazy.
It was.
I remember. You texted me early in the day, like morning. I woke up, my heartbeat's 170 something.
Yes. Right.
Oh.
Yeah. And so that, that got me, cardiologist said, well, let's put you on a beta blocker and, just even because this is also part of my health challenge, which is that, ta-da, I present very healthy.
Yeah.
And because I'm very calm, so the cardiologist said, okay, we'll just start taking this and we'll see in a week. We'll do a stress test and an echo. Drove to the stress test and the echo, and I came in and they said, oh, we can't do a stress test on you. Your heart is 174. I was like, yeah, I know, I can feel that.
Yeah.
And then when they did the echo, they saw that there was a fair amount of fluid around my heart. And they said, oh, you know what? I want you to go across the street to the hospital. So, you need to just go in and get admitted. We need to figure this out. So, they did in the hospital, did the surgery, of making a little window in the pericardial sac. I asked for Roman shades as window dressing, as furnishings. And then,
well, if you have a PPO, which you do, you should.
Right, then you get the extra bonus. Exactly. Yeah, not those cheapo.
No, you just get the things that you turn like.
Exactly. So they and still, and there's a laundry list of things that come up with what could have caused that, and still I was like, well, probably that virus damaged my heart in some way, and they sent that off to be to the pathology lab, and then when it came back showing cancer, and I went into my beloved amazing oncologist, came in, Adam and I are sitting in his office, and he came in and he said, what the hell? Which was very nice to hear, because of course, it's sort of like, what did we miss?
Yeah.
And there was just no, and there's definitely, it's a recurrence. This metastatic stage 4 is a recurrence, and yet it's different. It changed hormone, so it's just so bizarre. And then going through the shock of, I can't believe I'm in the middle of this. I've been here before, and yet this is different, right? And then the waiting for the time to wait for a PET scan, and then to have the PET scan and wait for the results to see what is the spread, where and how far is this, right? And thank God, because in the hospital I was doing a little bit of work, but in a good way, as far as reminding me of my sense of agency and identity and self. But when it was this isn't the same as a usual lobectomy, you're as one has every once in a while, right? Goes in and have part of this isn't just a surgery that one recovers from. This is a real shift of time and space and sense of future and life. and of course, just wanting to be the care and my concern, for my family, for my children, for Adam, and then the people I love in my life, and this knowing I got to work through this before I am again taking care of people, so that I don't
conflict and confuse,
right,
transfer,
right, do anything that could be harmful to them or to me. And oh my God, for the last couple of months, for you to be shouldering all of that piece, all of the calls and the counseling and the multiple, just everything that you're doing, and for Karen Block and Bill Levere in particular, as our president and VP of administration, to have the compassion and care to say, yes, here's the time for you to get your feet back under you.
Right.
It's just
your question.
Critical. Yeah.
The first time you went through cancer, you were a private citizen.
Yes.
Right? That's really different.
Yeah.
And now you're not. You're a public citizen, and you're doing this in front of people. How much do you have to get it right? Mm-hmm. How much can you just say, I'm just going to show my own vulnerability, and they're going to see me at my best and my worst? I don't know if that's even a question you can answer. What's your thought on it?
I mean, and Jack and I actually had this conversation. I think it was when I was talking with him as my father was ending, coming to the end of his physical life. And I was talking about what it is for a parent. This is a conversation I've had with different people through the years at VOS. As they've looked at the end of their lives. And so I was talking to Jack about what it is, the gift that a parent, whether literally of a child or just a person, not necessarily a parent, but again, I think about boundaries. What it is our responsibility as a parent to always be the adult, so to speak, even with adult children, always be the parent in relation to the child, to give this gift and this really important final lesson, which is how to handle diminishment, physical diminishment, and how to say goodbye with blessing for the ones that one loves and has been close to, and how to sort of shed the physical body with dignity, with vulnerability and love, and to model that. And so I was talking to Jack about how my father did this so beautifully, and also there were places where he couldn't go in terms of having that strength, that vulnerability, which it's very hard, I think, because I was just thinking about what it is to have that kind of conversation with someone you love, telling you and Braun this hard news. Oh, it's so hard. Because when you love someone, when I love, I don't want to ever hurt. And I remember you saying afterwards, asking, is this something I can share with my parents? And that just, I just burst into I've been holding things together pretty well. And then that, because I love them so much. So I'm very aware that the difference between the private and the past and the scale with which one goes through crisis and tribulation, and then on a very public scale. I had said to Jack back in, I don't know, December, probably, it must have been December, after the December service, and seeing my father go through this, I had said, I don't know when this time will come for me, but I do hope that I can make good use of my own years in order to model and to show how we can go with strength through times that are frightening, challenging, that involve suffering, but to be able to do it in a way that never lets go of the joy and play and the beauty and the amazing things in this creation. And also just to remind people, I take such a long view. I take a view that goes beyond the physical body. And that is not only in terms of ideas I have or thoughts I have about what happened after the body dies, but also when I look at my own children or the people who I've had relationships with and an impact on the world, and how that can ripple out beyond.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? What would doing it badly look like for you?
Mm-hmm. I think working my own mishagas out on other people.
That's to hear.
Yeah. So that to me, which is why I'm just so grateful for the time that I've had, even as, and this is your wisdom, because, you're the one who said how important it is to remember that I'm a body of energy. And that I have limited energy. And even, because I'd be like, I'd have periods of maybe even a whole day of feeling, yeah, I feel pretty good. So I'd just be like, and you'd be like, hang on. And then sure enough, of course, that would ebb and flow through a day even. So in the Bezrat Hashem, God willing, not for me to immediately say, okay, well, now that I know this is going on and I've finished, these procedures, then yeah, I had all that fluid drained out of my chest cavity last week. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, let me go. Like I'm right at it without remembering, hold back right now. Hang on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm amazed by you, and not amazed because I see the pattern of life that I've known. So you line up in crisis with how you have been in the best of times. So there isn't suddenly a jarring, who is this? She's being something other than what I've known her to be. So what you say doesn't surprise me. I'm sure it doesn't surprise anybody listening. I just think about, I guess, I don't know if I think about, but I certainly value, and we both do, vulnerability.
Yeah.
So I don't think about hard leadership. I'm not a general. Right. And maybe I could be. I don't know. I've never been tested. Maybe I have. Maybe there have been those moments when I've had to just say, look fear in the eyes and march forward. Yes, that happened. But as a servant leader, which is what we I think are now, not only by profession, but by nature, which is it's a generosity of leadership. But that's a different and more challenging kind of leader.
Yes.
Right? Because that's the boundary matters even more. Because if you're serving and serving and serving, well, you've got to reserve something for yourself. But I also think about vulnerability. What is strength if you're also vulnerable? I remember one time when one of my kids said to me, "Daddy, I've never seen you cry." And I cried at something. And I thought, what? How many times have you seen me cry and not known that you were, how can you think that? Whatever that was, fact or fiction, I feel like in leading my kids, which clearly I have done and continue to do as a parent, it hasn't been the aim. I haven't tried to project some kind of perfect model. I am always anything. And I've certainly let them see me at my best and my worst. And my worst is frustrated and angry because something's just not working or whatever it is. As I said, even swearing occasionally. But, I think my kids know me as a rounded human being. But then when you take that in front of a community, that's harder. And you always have the third eye. I always think about that third eye. I'm always aware without being too conscious of it, maybe I'm not always aware. It's so ingrained in me that I don't have to be aware of it, that I'm aware of myself. So I hope, and this is something I always thank God for, really consciously, thanking God for my editor more than my writer. Right? I really thank God for my editor, because that can go with age, and who knows when it goes, and you suddenly go, I'm just floundering in front of people. I can't hear my thoughts and edit them and know when I need to shrink this conversation or this sermon or this service, know when things need to, all that stuff, the third party, the producer, the director, the editor that's saying, okay, take this a little left now go right. And we do that all the time. I remember a time, I think we were in the Mormon Steak Center, not a restaurant in the Valley. It was the center up in Rinaldi. And I was very young, in my 20s, up there in my white robe, singing El Malé at the end of In Yisker. And I just couldn't sing. And I just started sobbing. And here I am, my family's out there, whatever, 1,000 people are out there. And that was a key moment for me in my leadership, because it happened again and again, by the way. But I feared it less, because I thought, well, that's who they want, or they would have left the synagogue. They would have gone for the guy who doesn't break down. And maybe by breaking down in front of 1,000 people, showing them that I'm not always the strong general marching off to take the hill, they're getting that I'm a lot like them. And hopefully that's good. One of the things that we talked about for this conversation is that we'd each bring a quote or two that are inspiring and guiding us. Can I read one to you?
Yes, please.
It's something that I love that I read recently. It's a little poem by an outlet. Her name is Charlotte Delbone. I've never heard of her. I'd never heard of her before this. It's just so wise and simple and beautiful. She writes, "You who are passing by, I beg you, do something. Learn a dance step. Something to justify your existence, something that gives you the right to be dressed in your skin and in your body hair. Learn to walk and to laugh, because it would be too senseless, after all, for so many to have died while you live, doing nothing for your life." It's so poignant, isn't it?
Yes, and I mean, of course, part of the power is the permission being given to us, I think, by here's a human being who saw the worst, who survived all of that, and that just the evil and the tragedy, and she gives us permission to enjoy life. Like she says, no survivor's guilt, right? No, how can you possibly be joyful when you know that in another corner of the world, in not even a corner, down the street, in the house just over here, she says, with that lived intensity and awareness that, you have to live joyfully and fully, that brings honor to to those who have died from tragedy, to those who are going through suffering.
In COVID as well. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. This full living. And, I remember my father, of course, as a combat veteran, he killed people. And, and what it was to make sense of that with this incredibly sweet, gentle man, and the moral injury, to his soul, to, against his grain, a man who is so much about social justice, who is so much about bringing light and goodness, and then to have to, as you mentioned about orders, to go off and to defend and fight for his values, and he wrote a beautiful poem about honoring the best way he could honor and make sense of, those he had killed in combat, to honor their lives was to live his life, to say, that this is, in a good way and with delight and with joy. So I think about, how important it is in these times of COVID, and turmoil, to just, relish and make sure that there's space for that, to look for, even if it's and I think sometimes it can fortunately open our awareness to the small things, the small beauties, that it doesn't take much, as I love, a full, an experience of some gorgeous concert and then going to have an amazing meal afterwards, and then all of these, the hugeness, but just being able to find and enjoy beauty and delight on a very small scale, since we are all kind of contained right now.
It also makes me think about something we talk a lot about, which is Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, and how, thinking about your dad, who, yes, he's dealing with all that horror in his life at the time and in his memory of those times, but then he points himself at life and heads in that direction. And that's kind of Man's Search for Meaning. He's saying logotherapy, what is it? It's all about meaning and purpose and finding meaning, and never looking out, as you said early on, with despair. By the way, talking about the tiny things, there's really a gorgeous impressionistic painting behind you, isn't it?
Yes.
I love the shades down, so we just see the impression of those trees, the color. It's really, really beautiful. Well, lovely one, beloved friend and treasured colleague, God bless you. And I'm putting my arms around you. Can you see them?
I know.
And I hope that, I've loved this hour with you, and I hope that we have many, 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 many hours like this, laughing and thinking about life and people that we love, this community, and what we get to do. And may that continue for years and years, decades to come. In the meantime, to everybody watching, I hope this has been valuable, not just for us. I hope it wasn't indulgent, but that it gave you some things to think about as well. We have a week of these kinds of conversations, and I hope you continue to join us for them, and that you lean into the holiday and lean into your relationships, because the holiday isn't some strange sacred thing. There's a word, right? Something that's not about us. It's really about us. It's almost as if the story, the tradition is saying, don't look up right now. Look forward. Look at each other. This is what it's aiming at. Do this. Have important conversations. Get to know each other on deeper levels. Get to know yourself through relationships. So I hope we're modeling that in at least a good way. And I wish everybody Shana Tova. Now that Rosh Hashanah is over, we shift from asking God to write us into the book of life, and now we say, well, assuming we're written in, because we're here, inscribe us in, make it indelible. And I hope that for all of you. Jen, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So fun to be with you. I look forward to 5781 as being a sweet year that, of course, challenges will continue. We know that. We absolutely know that. And yet I also know and am just can feel, I'm totally confident in not only challenges, but there's going to be so much laughter and sweetness and fun. And so and it'll be done together.
Right. Laughing at each other.
Yeah, of course.
One of the guarantees of 5781.
Yes.
All right. I'll sign off. Thank you so much.
To everybody, so much love.